Welcome here to Church of the Beatitudes. We are glad that you have chosen to be with us here this morning, and a huge thank you to Joy for on the piano. Thank you very, very much for having been a part of this. The advantage of the seat that I have is, number one, I get to watch her fingers and the way she's moving, and then number two, I get to watch her. And for those of you who don't know, those of you maybe watching online, Joy is Janelle's daughter, and
yeah, I'm a proud mama.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah,
she nailed it.
Yeah, so it's wonderful again, Joy, that you shared your gift with us. For those of you watching online, welcome. If you're watching us live or perhaps watching this at a later time, we realize that you have a lot of different ways you can use your time, and we want to thank you for having chosen to be a part of this. And if you are ever on the corner of Glendale and 7th Avenue in Phoenix, you are welcome in this place. And this time, we would like to share with you some of the stuff that's going on in our church.
It's May Day.
May Day.
You know what that means?
No.
It means that we get to celebrate spring.
Oh, okay.
But in Phoenix, that's a little weird.
Yes.
Like it doesn't match up with the temperatures, does it?
I thought spring started like in February.
Yeah. Well, technically, no.
No. This feels like summer to me.
We have some exciting things that we can celebrate in May. We have a lot going on.
Yes, we do.
First, Mom's Day is next week, in case you've forgotten. But Faith in Action is doing their purse drive. So today's the last day. This is for Shoebox Ministry, for you to leave your purses filled with hygiene products, and they will get them to some deserving moms out there in the community. And second, there are countless events that were postponed over the past 2 years because of the pandemic, right? So guess what?
Today's May Day.
Oh. Good job, you were listening.
Yes, I was.
That's not what I was going to say.
Did I guess right?
No,
Oh.
no. So we're bringing back.
I don't know why you asked me to guess when you know I'm not going to guess right.
Because, yeah, I know that.
You make me look like a fool.
Yeah,
That's
love ya.
okay.
So anyway, we have two things coming back on Sunday, May 22nd.
Okay.
Something we haven't done in a long time.
Oh,
Think back.
I do remember.
You do? What
Rites
is
of
it?
Passage.
Right.
Yes.
Good job.
Yes.
So our children and youth, we want to celebrate those, if you entered grades kindergarten, 4th, 7th, or high school, or you graduated from a high school or college in the years 2020, 2021, or this year, 2022, please have your parents email your name and the grade that you transitioned to and the year that it occurred to Denny Nordmeyer, and we're going to recognize them on the 22nd for that accomplishment.
Yes.
And then what's the second thing that we haven't done in a long time?
Well, it's right up there. I cheated and looked.
Oh.
New Member Sunday.
Oh, wow.
No, up here I looked.
Oh.
New Member Sunday.
That's right. We want to recognize there were actually growth. Growth happened in our church over COVID. During COVID. So, yeah. So we have new members that we would like to recognize on the 22nd. And this is actually a really good time that if you're considering joining, you can get on it. Yeah.
Now's the time to join.
So all you have to do is get a hold of me. You can email me at media@beatitudeschurch.org. That's MEDIA @beatitudeschurch.org. And I will set you up with a packet that you will fill out, and then you have to have a brief visit with this gentleman right here. And then you're a member. It's really easy, see? And I want you to mark your calendars, because next Sunday, besides it being Mother's Day, the Arts Council is bringing a new art exhibit, and it's art that's crafted using all repurposed materials.
You know, that's one of the most exciting things to me about looking the foyer.
What?
Is sometimes I prefer not to have the announcement, because it's almost like I start walking in wondering when is the new one going to arrive.
Oh. so I should stop.
No, you do that. But it just, to me, it's just always this excitement of wondering, okay, what is the new art going to look like? What's it going to be?
I've seen it.
You've seen it?
I've seen it.
Yeah, I'm looking
It's
forward
going to
to
be
it.
really exciting. So you want to check that out next Sunday. And also, next Saturday, May the 7th, all the women, our Women in Faith gathering is going to be at 9:45. We'll gather outside of room 4. We have a little visiting time, and then we're going to wrap up our study called The Cup of Our Life. This has been an interesting study for
Is
all
it?
of us. Yes, it's the ways in which we fill our cups and how to empty them for what's most important in our spiritual journey.
Oh, okay. So you're talking metaphorical cups.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's just.
I just didn't know what you were
You
doing
should have
there.
come to the study, but oh wait, you're
It's-
not a woman,
I'm
so
not,
sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'm not in touch.
Or please open and read your weekly e-blast this week for all the details on things that I might have missed telling you about this morning. Or go to our website and go to the events page. There's an orange button there, and you can click on a download, and you'll get the PDF of all the details. So what else do we have going on next week?
Next week, we have on our Ruminate on That, our podcast, we have something a little different this time because Janelle won't be there. She's going to be gone. And
Taking a little break.
Charity,
No.
Charity won't be there. So I am bringing in a guest by the name of Diana Fronterhouse. And she is a specialist in media.
Oh.
She's been on the radio. See, you know who she is. She's been on the radio. She does podcasts. And so I'm bringing her on. And our subject next week is going to be prayer and high school coaches, which is currently going on right now in the Supreme Court. And the question is freedom of religion and freedom from religion. And that's the subject we'll be covering tomorrow. A week from Sunday. If you cannot join us live, we meet in the lounge at 8:45. If you cannot join us live, you can always watch it live or watch it another time by visiting our church website at
www.beatitudeschurch.org.
correct.
And go to the latest media page.
Yep, and currently also that we have planned 2 weeks from today, and the reason we're giving you notice of this is someone that you might want to come and actually listen to in person, and that will be Jan Phillips. She has written a book recently. It's a kind of a memoir, and she identifies as a queer mystic.
Yeah.
What's amazing about Jan Phillips is she went from being a Catholic nun to a queer mystic, and it's the story of her transition in life and the different transitions that she went through, and it's amazing. I've enjoyed
It's a
reading the book
fascinating
right
read,
now. Yeah.
for sure.
And then also after service, you have many options. One of the options that many find to be their least favorite is to get in their car and leave. That's the least favorite option among the people here at Church of the Beatitudes. The other option is you can visit Triple C Cafe, which I can't remember all the C's, what they stand for, but it's a great opportunity to go over there and find out what they mean and ask them, why is this called Triple C Cafe? And an opportunity to have a drink and to visit with each other.
Fellowship,
And then also, Ruminate will be meeting, and that's in room 9. No,
No, 11.
it's in room 11. And
Look for the cow.
yeah,
on
if
the
you
door.
look across here, you'll see a door with a picture of a cow in it. Go inside that door. We are going to be discussing young evangelicals and climate change. It's amazing what they are experiencing right now in their lives. So it's going to be a great discussion.
Sure is. Is that it?
That is it.
I think that's
One of the
enough.
things that I have learned about from many of our different church members is to pay a little bit more attention to the world in which we live. It's easy for me to get caught up in the regular work today stuff, but the reality is we are so fortunate to be experiencing the life that we are. And we have a responsibility to make a difference. And so our opening words of worship capture that idea. And I will be reading the italic print, and if you will join with Janelle in the reading of the bold. In the beauty of the earth,
in the silence of our hearts,
in the community of our church,
in all the works of love and kindness, in forgiving from the heart,
and in worship from the soul, sacred be your name.
Sacred be your name.
Staying with that theme, our opening hymn is hymn number 12. You can either find that in your hymnal or you can see the words on the screen, and it is entitled, I Sing the Mighty Power of God. Please stand as we sing together.
I sing the mighty power of God that made the mountains rise, that spread the flowering seas abroad and built the lofty skies. I sing the wisdom that ordained the sun to rule the day. The moon shines full at God's command, and all the stars obey. I sing the goodness of our God that filled the earth with food, God formed the creatures with a word, and then pronounced them good. Oh, how your wonders are displayed where'er I turn my eye. If I survey the ground I tread, or gaze upon the sky,
On earth there's not a plant or flower that makes your glory known. The clouds arise and spread their showers by order from your throne. All life is but a gift from you, and ever in your care. Wherever people gather you, O God, are present there.
It. Today is the first Sunday of the month, and with the drop in cases with COVID, we have again been able to return to celebrating communion together. In celebrating communion here at Church of the Beatitudes, we are part of a tradition that is followed by many different churches when we practice open communion, which means that at any age, if you are a member or not a member, it doesn't matter, that you are welcome to partake of communion with us. And what we will do is, after the ushers come forward, and we will speak a few words, and then you are invited to come forward and receive the bread and the wine. The bread and the fruit that we will partake of this morning nourishes us that we may in turn nourish others.
And through this act, we affirm that we are committed to Jesus' way of love and peace by our motives, our thoughts, our actions, and our practices in this world.
And not only that, through this act, we acknowledge that as Homo sapiens, we are one, and that we must consciously choose day by day to be in right relationship with each other and our sacred values.
In the act of taking communion, we dedicate ourselves, both individually and collectively, to make love and compassion real in this world, here and now, and throughout all of our lives.
And so the degree that you are comfortable, you are invited to participate and to come forward and receive these elements. If you cannot come forward, an usher will bring them to you if you will just raise your hand. So at this time, we invite you to come forward and participate.
Today, Pastor Tony begins a new sermon series exploring the early Christian church through our 21st century lens. Jesus has died and resurrected, and we find ourselves asking, then what? Scripture tells us the early church experienced persecution and internal dissent, but somehow, kind of rather paradoxically, it experiences substantial growth. Just how did a handful of followers grow into 30 million in just 300 years and into the largest religion in the world today? We begin our search in Galatians 1:11-14, in which the Apostle Paul writes a letter to the church in Galatia that he helped to found. I want you to know, brothers and sisters, that the gospel I preached is not of human origin. I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it. Rather, I received it by revelation from Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely I persecuted the church of God and tried to destroy it. I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my own age among my people and was extremely zealous for the traditions of my fathers.
Planet of the Apes. Perhaps you remember in 1968 when the movie came out, it was quite a thriller. What's amazing is the stuff that happened behind the scenes, stuff that perhaps you are not even aware of. Now, to understand Planet of the Apes and what was happening behind the scenes, first have to describe to you that the movie was made in purpose to show different social statuses when it came to the primates. The orangutans were in charge, and then from there it broke down into the apes, and then from the apes to the chimpanzees. Now, offset, when you weren't seeing them actually filmed, you would actually see an image like this. And what's interesting is these individuals, when they were in character, they actually maintained the same social status and the idea of separation. They didn't do it on purpose. So it ended up that those who were made up as orangutans, at lunch, they would eat together. The apes would eat together, and the monkeys would eat together. And again, none of this was done on purpose. They naturally gravitated to those who were like them. There is an expression that says the following: there are two kinds of people in the world. Those who divide the world into two kinds of people, and those who don't. Well, unfortunately, the majority of us are in that first group of people. That idea of separating us and them is very much hardwired into our brains. It happens so quickly that we are not even aware of it. A study was done to prove this. They took an individual and they put them in an MRI. Once in the MRI, they flashed images at a 50 millisecond. That's 20th of a second. This speed was such that you would barely be able to even recognize the image as it popped up that quickly. What they discovered was that as you saw these images appear, if you saw someone who looked differently than you, who had a different skin color than you, your amygdala would fire. Now, the amygdala does a wide variety of things, but we know it as the seat of fear and also aggression. Imagine that. It doesn't matter what color the person is inside of the MRI. White, brown, black, doesn't matter. They are going to have the same response. The MRI doesn't tell the difference between skin colors. All it's doing is watching, excuse me. all it's doing is watching the activity of your brain. And when that activity happens, it registers it. Another study was done. They had individuals watch a film. And as they were watching the film, you would notice on the film that someone took a needle and they poked the skin. Well, again, what happens is, as you're watching that film, your motor cortex kicks in. And to different degrees, individuals would clench their fist. Imagine that. It wasn't even happening to them. But their brains responded to what they were seeing. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If that person on the screen was of a different color than you would be not as likely to respond as strongly to that needle poke. Now again, the brain isn't choosing, you're not choosing to respond. This is automatic. It's happening far quicker than you could probably even think it through. The one that I found very interesting, and I don't know how they studied this one, but studies show that individuals think less of atheists when they have just walked by a church. Isn't that amazing? So imagine what's going to happen after you leave here today. You're probably not going to think very highly of atheists. What we're talking about, this separation between them and us, happens automatically in our minds. And it happens on an emotional level. One study I read described how we as human beings, that we are like an elephant. And the elephant represents our emotions. And on top of the elephant sits reason, our rational minds. And it's a monkey. Now imagine that monkey trying to steer that elephant. Just not going to happen. What they have shown over and over is that we are emotional beings, and when something happens, as in this study, that you see someone who is different than you, it is an automatic emotional response. But because we like to make meaning out of things, our mind comes up with a reason for why we're feeling this emotion. So we give meaning to that which we feel. In our minds, we think we're just being rational. But studies again have showed that it's actually the opposite. An emotional response, and then we give meaning to it. But we think that meaning is true. Recently, I had to participate in a class called Decentering Whiteness. It's one that is through our conference that all of us have to participate in. It becomes an awareness of being white and the privileges that come with that. As I was participating in this, one of the thoughts that continually entered my mind was this sense of shame. The problem is I can't change the fact that I'm white. Nothing I can do about it. But at times, those thoughts will come into my mind, or feelings I will become aware of if I pay attention to them when I see someone different than me. And this is just my opinion. And if you disagree with me, great, because then we'll have something to talk about. But it seems to be in our society today, there's a lot of shame being placed upon people because of how they feel to people that are different than them. But when I read these studies, I realize this is just who I am. It's part of my mind. It's hardwired into me. Now, that does not excuse my behavior. It does not excuse me for the way I treat other people, the way I speak about other people. But perhaps we ought to be a little bit easier on ourselves and others and realize that what is taking place within us is part of what it means to be a Homo sapien. So what in the world are we talking about this in church for? Well, the reason why we're talking about this is because it immediately impacts what took place after Easter. After Jesus was no longer physically present on this earth. One of the first things that we read about is about Paul's life. Some people speculated that Paul was anywhere from a few months to a few years that he had what is called his conversion experience. But it was during this period of time prior to his conversion that Paul tells us what his life was like. Now, you can read about this in Acts, but to really probably get a better picture is to go to the source himself, and that is in the book of Galatians. Listen again what the text says. For you have heard of my previous way of life in Judaism, how intensely, how to an extraordinary degree I persecuted the church of God, and I tried to destroy it. What's fascinating is that word in the original language, to destroy, is the same word that is used for an army attacking a city. It has that kind of hostility to it. So Paul is saying, look, I'm out to get rid of these people. He continues, I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my age among my people, and I was extremely zealous. I was passionate. I was eager to destroy them. So my question is, why? Now, if Paul was doing it, more than likely he wasn't the only one. There was probably other people who were out to get their fellow Jew. Now, notice I didn't use the word Christian, because at this point, there was no, quote, church. There were no Christians. They were all Jews. But they were a group of Jews who believed differently. So the question is, why would Paul go after his own people? The answer is that they were different than the majority of them. They were a them, and Paul and the rest were us. So remember what we talked about, that if you have someone who's different than you, we naturally will feel aggression or somewhat hesitant about them and see them possibly even as a threat. And that can express itself anywhere from a microaggression to an all-out act of hostility. And apparently that's what Paul's doing. He's out to eliminate these people who believe differently than the majority of his fellow Jews. What was it? What was this whole thing about? Jesus. As we mentioned on Easter Sunday, there were individuals who believed that they had seen Jesus. More than likely, probably not a resuscitated body, but some kind of vision or some kind of appearance that was something other than just what Jesus was prior to his death. These individuals who believed in that, they begin to believe that Jesus was, and here's the key word to understand, at this time, is they believed he was the Messiah. Well, what's the big deal? It's a really big deal. Because the majority of people believed that the Messiah was to be this powerful being. I mean, for how long Israel had been oppressed and had been subject to other nations? They were tired of it. Their history, their tradition said that they were God's people. So they were looking for a sense of independence. Much like Ukraine right now is feeling the threat of losing their independence. So these people wanted their independence again, and they believed that God would send them a Messiah. Well, then along come this group of Jews who say, no. Jesus was the Messiah. And they go, no. That's anathema. That's heresy. The Messiah will not die on a cross. We have to quiet these people down. I'm sorry. This church has been quite a challenge for me. When I first came here, you've given me a great deal of freedom, and with a great deal of freedom comes many responsibilities, and one of those, now I actually have to pay attention to what I'm saying, and because words will come to my mind more frequently than they used to. So they made him be quiet, because they can't have that. So they begin to encourage people like Paul to persecute them, these Christians, these Jews who were on the fringes. You know what's amazing is that Paul has this conversion experience where he sees Jesus more than likely in a vision, believes that Jesus is alive, converts, sees Jesus as this new Messiah. And you know what happens? They start persecuting him. He was one of them. But as soon as he moved away, they're not going to tolerate that. In 2 Corinthians, Paul says that 5 times he was lashed 40 strikes less one. A punishment that would take place within the Jewish synagogue. As soon as Paul decided to believe differently than the majority, he was in trouble. Why? Because it all starts with this up here. Through evolution, we have developed brains, and the way we developed them was to protect ourselves. Let me tell you really quickly about Joe. Joe lived thousands and thousands of years ago. Joe was actually pre-Homo sapien. Joe lived within a clan. And Joe's personality was such that he never knew a stranger. When Joe would hear someone coming along a path, rather than hiding, Joe would go out, "Hey, buddy!" Joe never had children because Joe died when he was young. We learned at a young age that people that are different than us are a threat to us. It's part of our brains. But now we have the choice to how we will respond to people that are different than us. I offer you two possibilities for you to consider. You cannot control this part of your brain unless we go in there and cut out your amygdala. You're not going to be able to control it. It's just going to happen. But when your brain kicks in and gives meaning to this emotion, that's where you make a choice. And two things that you can do can stop yourself from acting or continuing to think and go down a certain path when it comes to other people that are different than you. Number one, remember that people that are different from you have the same goals that you do. People that are different than you, who look different than you, who identify gender differently than you, who have a sexual orientation that's different than you, who live in a different place than you live. And folks, I'm going to bring it home to Church of the Beatitudes in just a minute. I'm coming to it, but will you pay attention now? But all of these people that are different than us, they all have the same goals as us. They want to feel safe. They want to feel love. And they want to love. They have dreams. They want a meaning for their life. They want a sense of purpose so that when they go through the difficult times in life, they realize, yes, but here's why I'm here. This is who I am and why I exist. That's just like all of us. And if we do that, we immediately begin to take in our brains and squash this huge dichotomy between us, and we begin to narrow that. So that's number one. Number two, individuate. Individuate versus essentialate. Let me explain the difference. Typically, when we see them, you know what I'm talking about? That church down there, them. Those people that live in South Phoenix, them. What we do is when we see groups of people that are different than us, and it's more than just race. We tend to categorize people together, and when we do that, we believe that the essence of those people are all the same. When I first came to Church of the Beatitudes, I talked to people who didn't attend here. And you know what they said about us? Oh, that's where all the wealthy, snooty people go. There are young people that have visited this church that have told me afterwards, well, I like the service, but I'm not comfortable there because there's so many blue-haired people. Well, first of all, we don't have blue hair in this church. But you know what I'm talking about. What they did is they insinuate. They assumed that because we're all basically of the same age, that we must all be the same. And we do that all the time. When you individuate, you begin to see people within the group. One writer says to try the following. If you catch your thoughts and you begin to see someone that's You know what I'm talking about, right? That young man who's walking down, who knows why he's wearing a belt, correct? I mean, his pants are down to here, and he's still got a belt on. We make assumptions about them. But if you ask yourself, the next time you catch yourself making those thoughts kick in, and remember, they're kicking in because the emotion has already been activated, and you have no control of it. Once you're aware of it, however, and you see someone who's differently than you, maybe you feel threatened by them, maybe you look at them derogatory, and you don't want to feel that way, you don't want to look at them that way, here's what you can do. Ask yourself this question. I wonder, what kind of vegetable do they like? Now, why would you do that? Because immediately you've made them an individual. You no longer see them and classify them as a bigger group of people. You see them as a person who has their own goals and dreams in life. So that's why Paul ended up doing what he did and being treated the way he did, or the way he was. That's why religious groups continue to do this to each other. It's a part of our nature. It's part of our wiring. But each and every one of us have a choice. Today you can choose to leave this place and live your life a little differently than you did before you came in here. When I consider the life of Jesus, nowhere in the Bible does it say this, but when I read about the stories and the words that he said that these individuals decades later remembered or created about him, they give us a picture, in my opinion, of someone who was open to growth, to becoming what it really means to be a human being. So please, do two things. Number one, release the shame that comes from our society because of the way you feel. And don't place that shame on other people. But number two, make choices about how you're going to live your life despite what naturally happens within you. Man, what a difference we could have in our world. That's why I believe in this church. That's why I believe in you. Because we can make a difference today. Amen.
As one of the many types of faith practitioners that we here at this church find ourselves as, we have generations of experience on how to do some of the very things that Pastor Tony proposed to you in his sermon today. And the first one is prayer, meditation, being in conversation with yourself and in conversation with the higher being, in conversation with the energies in the world around us. So please join me in prayer. And as you do so, settle in to wherever and however you find yourself at this moment. And find your center. Dear Creator, may the God who created you, may the God who created Jesus grant us the vision to see love alive in the world, to give us the courage to seek it, to give us the courage to give it and to receive it, the grace to play with it, even to drop it and break it. May we be given the grace and the hope to hold it, to spread it, and to trust it. May you know that the generations that came before you and the God that created you is indeed love and is indeed in love with you. Amen.
Mothering God, you gave me birth in the bright morning of this world. Creator, source of every breath, you are my rain, my wind, my sun. You are my rain, my wind, my sun. Mothering Christ, you took my form, offering me your food of light, grain of life and grape of love, your very body for my peace, your very body for my peace. Mothering Spirit, nurturing one, in arms of patience, hold me close, so that in faith I root and grow until I flower, until I know, until I flower, until I know.
Our next hymn today is called We Are the Rainbow People by Dosha. I know many of you were friends with Dosha. Give a hi. Yes. I loved Dosha too. You may not know that, but we were chummy. Esther actually introduced me to her years ago, and she came and spoke at Via de Cristo, and I'm going to tell just a quick story on her because she was really a very funny woman. There was once where she came to speak, and she had her little book of hymns with her, and I hadn't seen it yet. And she came up to speak, and she parked herself at a little desk, and she was like, "Hey, Erin, come over here." And I came up and sat next to her, and she's like, "Sing that." And she had me sight read 2 of her hymns in front of the entire congregation. And I was like, "Are you crazy?" It was hilarious, and it was a good little insight into like what it meant to be a friend of Dosha's. And so this is hers. We Are the Rainbow People. If you don't know it, you've heard it already during communion, but we're gonna play it once through again so that you get the rhythm, and then we'll all sing together.
are the rainbow people, reflecting many hues, enlightened by God's promise. We radiate good news. God of storms and showers, God with healing powers, bless us with your light. We all walk through water, refreshed to journey on. God's Spirit brings forgiveness, consuming fears are gone. God of storms and showers, God of healing powers, bless us with your hope. We have imagination to dream of what might be, envisioning a future made strong through unity. God of storms and showers, God of healing powers, bless us with your hope.
A quick reminder is immediately after the service, if you desire, you can come up here to my right. Lucy Fredrickson, who leads our prayer ministry, will be over here, and she is available for you to come and pray with. It is an amazing experience if you've never had that opportunity. So we just sang about how different we really are. The challenge about accepting other people is you first have to learn how to accept yourself. So our blessing today is one that is blessed for you individually, to accept all the essence of who you are. Please receive this blessing. May Spirit bless you in your body with health, in your mind with understanding, and in your spirit with a passion for making love real. Amen.